Safety's added a 62-year-old woman from Brazoria County to its top 10 most wanted fugitive list. Margaret Lorraine Smith is wanted for fleeing during her capital murder case. She's charged with hiring a man to kill her husband, George Smith, in August 2007. He was beaten to death.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of True Crime and Storytime. I am your hostess, Christy, and here we discuss a true crime or story that either you recommended or one that I've been personally interested in. You guys, I need to apologize. I've been MIA, and thanks to Kiara and Dre for pushing for this video. We are now getting it done. I've had this information and everything already put together. I just haven't organized, edited, or any of that. So I do want to apologize to you guys. Lots been going on, but I will do my best to be more consistent. Today we're going to be talking about the most wanted woman in Texas. A woman who, as you heard, savagely orchestrated the brutal murder of her husband. I have no words, but we'll get right into it. For the purposes of this video, we're going to refer to Margaret Smith as Lorraine. There are several other recordings out there where she's being known as Lorraine, called Lorraine, so to not confuse anything, she's Lorraine. George and Lorraine were married for 28 years. They raised 4 children. Stormy Summer, Scarlet Sunset, and Saffron Sunshine were their daughters, and Sequoia Sundance their son. Now, according to George's sister, he really didn't have anything to do with the naming of the children. It was something that Lorraine really wanted, and in order to keep his wife happy, he just went with it. He let his wife name his children whatever made her happy, and that was that. By all accounts, George and Lorraine were madly in love. They resided in Surfside, Texas with their family, and that's close to like the Houston-Galveston area. So they had a ton of beach to explore, tons of ocean to surf in. George is also a Marine veteran. He opened up a burger joint called Burger Smith's. The family resided on about 10 acres of beach land, and at the time, it was estimated to be worth anywhere between $3 to $4 million. George was extremely proud of his business and how things were going. It was a poppin' place where people could sit and relax, have a great meal, look out upon the beach, look into the ocean, and just have a great family day. Things were going great for the Smith family. Business was booming. They were getting more customers in, and naturally, with more customers, you need more seating. So I don't know about any other place in the world, but I know in Texas, certain counties, you actually have to have a building permit to add on to your structure, whether it's commercial or residential. George decided, to hell with these permits. He's going to make more space for his customers. As a result of the continued fighting that George was going through with the county, in 1994, he decided that he was going to close his business. Since there wasn't an income from the restaurant anymore, things became financially tough for the family. So Lorraine naturally wanted her husband to sell off some of the property to kind of make up for that income. But for George, he worked too hard. He wanted to leave something to his children. And as a result, he declined his wife's requests. Any other time, George did whatever he could to make Lorraine happy. But this time, he just had to say no. Because George wouldn't sell off some of the property, it caused a lot of turmoil and confusion within the marriage. So much so that Lorraine tried to end it. She started seeing a man that lived not too far from her, And the family describes her demeanor as promiscuous, dressing in ways that was not becoming of a mother. She was just a totally new woman to them, and not in a good way. Scarlett, who married in 2003, wasn't aware of everything that was going on with her family, but in the upcoming clip, you'll hear how she describes some of the behaviors of her mother.
My mother was getting neglectful, letting my little sister Saffron and my little brother Sequoia stay with me more often or taking them to my dad's. He'd be doing his own thing, and they pretty much take care of themselves a lot.
My mom told people that we were being homeschooled, but she didn't homeschool us at all. I taught myself how to read and write, and Saffron, my sister, had trouble with it. When my sister Scarlett found out about that, she was very upset.
I actually started homeschooling him.
George had a good family friend named Bing Cosby, who states that George and Lorraine's relationship was more so of a love-hate relationship. In 2005, George decided he wanted to leave everything to his wife. Bing warned him, "Man, leave her. She's crazy. She's going to kill you." Naturally, George, loving his wife, wanting her back, willing to do anything, didn't listen. And as a result, sometime between 2005 and 2007, Lorraine managed to get a hold of a deed to one of the properties, selling over 13 acres, getting a large sum of money, and giving George not one penny. Like anybody else, George was pissed. This woman just decided to sell 13 acres of his property. So what does he do? He goes over to a neighbor's house. He tells him, "Hey, look, man, I want to redo a will. I need you guys to be my witnesses." This man basically seen what was coming and said, "If anything happens to me, this is who you give it to. This is what I need done." Because now he was making sure he was leaving a legacy for his children. Yes, he still loved Lorraine, but he realized that there was no getting her back. On August 6, 2007, Lorraine contacted George, saying that she wanted to talk with him, possibly come to terms with how things are going and maybe even work things out. So the two agreed to meet at their favorite Mexican restaurant. There they ate dinner, had a few drinks. According to reports, George had a few more than Lorraine, margaritas to be exact. Things were looking pretty good, like maybe George was going to get his family back. But something went terribly wrong because on August 7th, criminal investigator Stephen Buchanan received a call from dispatch stating that there was a death investigation at Surfside Beach. When he got there, he said he couldn't even recognize the deceased male. There was severe trauma to his face and head, and the only way that identification could be made was because he had his wallet in his pocket. And upon further investigation, discovered that it was in fact George Smith. There was a local address on that ID, and when he went there, Lorraine was sitting in the house. She was informed that her husband was found on the beach deceased. Once they began to question her, she gave them this story about them going out to dinner and her stopping at a gas station to get beer for him. And George became upset, kicked her out of the vehicle, and she walked, I guess, presumably, to the home. After the contact had been made, Lorraine decided to call Scarlett and explain to her what had happened to her father. I'm going to play a clip of Scarlett describing how that call went.
At 9 o'clock in the morning, my mom phone called me and said, "Let me talk to your husband." And I was like, "No, I know my dad's dead. Just tell me he's dead." And she was like, "No, I need to talk to Cortland. Let me talk to Cortland." And I knew he was dead. And I told her, I said, "Just tell me he's dead." I said, "Just tell me that he's not alive, because I know he's not." And then she was like, "Yeah, he died, you know, like they found him dead," kind of, you know. The whole time I'm talking to her on the phone, you know, she sounds like she's crying. And I later find out from the investigator that not one tear was shed out of her eyes when she was telling me that my father had died.
No tears. She just went off into how everything happened. It was almost as she was wanting to tell me her side.
So a couple of days after that phone call to her daughter, Lorraine contacted Investigator Buchanan. She tried to revise her statement, stating that she didn't tell the whole truth. Somewhere in there is a mixture of what actually happened and what she wanted them to think happened. But I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from C.I. Buchanan, and it'll show some of the discrepancies.
She made a statement, "I didn't mean to do it. You know, it was an accident." And asking her what it was, she never explained. Later, she told her kids that she was on the beach with their father. So we have Lorraine out there on the beach with George.
But she said she was not there during the time of the murder, that she left prior to anything happening to George.
So Lorraine is just denying everything, lying about everything. But criminal investigator Buchanan received a phone call from an inmate at the Brazoria County Jail. And he informs him that he knows the who, what, and how of the death of George Smith. Now, of course, this is a huge surprise, because how would anybody know what is going on that's currently in jail? And this is where we get into the who. Meet Dylan Lowry. Dylan is a father of 3, also a Marine veteran. He and Lorraine are acquainted through her boyfriend and their overall circle of friends. He's known in the drug world as a seller, a user, you know, the typical shady type. And this is where he comes into the story.
First time I met her, she asked if I could make someone disappear. I asked her, "Well, what do you mean disappear? I mean, you want someone dead, or you want someone to take somebody and take them on a trip? What do you want?" She said, "Well, I just want them to disappear." She then proceeded to tell me the person in question was her sister's husband, who was abusing her sister and her sister's children for years now. She said that she wanted something done about it, and her sister was too afraid to do anything, so she was taking it into her own hands and trying to find a solution. She had counted out some money and handed it to me. I told her, well, I didn't want anything to do with whatever it was she had going on, and I tried to give her the money back. She refused to take the money, told me just to hold on to it.
The inmate that contacted me told me that another friend of his was approached by Dylan and asked if he had a weapon. He then basically said, "We don't have anything but a leaf spring." A leaf spring is a flat piece of metal, heavy. It's a long bar, flat bar, probably 1/4 of an inch thick.
So the money that Lorraine paid Dylan is the money that she received from selling off George's property. You know, that 13 acres that I mentioned earlier? So George inadvertently paid for his own murder. Like, I can't even fathom the idea, right? To top it all off, the medical examiner, did confirm that it was a leaf spring that killed George. Now, a whole bunch came out after the medical examiner's report, and Lorraine intentionally took George to drink all those margaritas because she wanted to get him drunk. And this was so that the murder could take place. So from the restaurant to intentionally getting him drunk, we're going to hear criminal investigator Buchanan go into what happened following their little escapade at the restaurant.
Lorraine stated that she stopped at the local convenience store. We went there and pulled the video. You could see her talking on the phone, looking out the windows. Pulling the cell phone records, we found out that the phone number that she had received a call from belonged to a female. I identified the female, took a statement from her, and later she stated that Dylan Lowry used her cell phone.
So she leaves the convenience store. George is in the vehicle. They go to the beach. He sits down the raincoat, and then she comes up with some asinine excuse as to why she has to go back to the vehicle. This is when Dylan approaches and he savagely murders George with the leaf spring. Now, they're both charged with the death of George. However, Dylan maintains his innocence all the way through his trial. But clearly the jury didn't believe him because he is now serving a life sentence in Midway, Texas.
It sounds to me as if she did it herself. Margaret Lorraine planned everything and followed through with the plan and executed and killed her husband, George Smith, at the beach because it was just all too sloppy for somebody who supposedly was a hitman. He has to pay the price. Somebody has to serve the punishment for the life taken of another man. If Margaret Lorraine Smith was here right now, I'd probably ask her why. Why me?
Now, Lorraine is caught. She goes to jail and she's being arraigned in front of a judge. She had a $100,000 bond, but for whatever reason, the judge just wasn't with that, right? So he lowers it. What he lowers it to, I have no idea. But what I do know is that in order to bond herself out, she needed collateral. And the collateral she used was the beach property that George decided to leave for his kids. Somewhere, somebody dropped the ball because the new will wasn't registered with the county, so they could only go by the old will that left everything to Lorraine and was actually notarized. Well, because we're here, we can only assume that they lost that property because Miss Thang is the most wanted woman in Texas. As a condition of her bond, Lorraine was supposed to wear this ankle monitor. And she also had a probation officer. So she informs her probation officer that she has this doctor's appointment in Houston. Now, just a couple weeks before she's due to report back to court, she cuts the damn thing off. Now, I've watched several crime shows. I've gone to school for criminal justice. And I know that if you cut that thing off, it's supposed to alert the authorities. It didn't. and Lorraine ended up catching a ride from Angleton, Texas to Houston.
We collected video where it does show that Lorraine was dropped off at the hospital, and then she's just walking straight out of the hospital, and she has some large baggage with her.
It was several days later that she was seen for the last time picking up money at a Western Union in San Antonio, and she's been on the run ever since.
I couldn't even begin to imagine losing a parent so savagely. For his kids to know that their mother did this to their father, it's like losing two parents at one time. Scarlett is quoted as saying, "We pray she is caught. We live with the scars she created in our lives daily. We are trying to move on with our lives and live in the present as much as possible." So overall, she killed her husband for land, for the money for the property, just to lose it in the end. Sounds like George's death was in vain, leaving those that love and cherished him to just long for him, to miss him. But we're going to end this with some powerful words from his friend, Bing Cosby.
He's up in heaven doing the Holy Ghost shuffle. He's dancing and looking at the sea of glass, thinking, man, I can surf this. I can surf this. God, give me a board.
Margaret Smith is wanted for hiring the man that murdered her husband. In 2009, she lured George Smith to a location where he was attacked and beaten to death by Dylan Lowry. While Lowry is serving a life sentence, Smith continues to be on the run. If you have any information about Margaret Smith, please call the U.S. Marshals at 1-877-926-8332.